Hello everyone, my name is Krista Harris and I'm a graduate student at the University of New Hampshire working under Dr. Ryan Dixon. My talk today is gonna show the details of a project that I did this summer where we evaluated greenhouse crops that were grown in media amended with wood materials. So basically, I'm talking about the soil that fills the pots where plants are grown in a greenhouse setting. And so just a little background about this material in general. Sphagnum peat moss is a major component of potting media used to grow greenhouse container crops. So as you can see right here, this is a typical crop grown in a greenhouse. The pot is filled with this peat moss material. And peat is used because it can hold a lot of water, which plants need water, so that's perfect. It has a high porosity, so it can also supply enough oxygen to the root zone, which is also necessary for plant growth. And traditionally, it has been cheap to harvest and produce, and it's been of consistent quality. So a greenhouse grower that's producing a large crop in individual pots can have consistent quality in each one. Issues that have been coming up recently are that there is an increasing production cost, and there's been concerns with its harvesting process. It's environmentally concerning, and there's also been inconsistent quality reports from growers. And it's now regarded as a non-renewable resource, so we're using it faster than it's replenishing itself. And so the potting media itself is made up of one or two different materials. Peat usually makes up about 40% or more of that by volume. And other portions of the potting media is made up of secondary materials, such as coconut coir, which can increase drainage and increase the oxygen to the root zone, which is shown in the top picture. Perlite, the little white particles shown in the middle picture, that can also increase oxygen availability to roots, or vermiculite, which is the bottom picture, and that helps with nutrient retention. And so this new wood fiber and wood chip materials, they show potential as a secondary material in potting media. And so these wood materials, shown in the picture on the top, could replace perlite, vermiculite, or even the peat itself because it's potentially less expensive to produce. And it mostly comes from pine trees, which is a renewable resource. Potential drawbacks with using this material in potting media is there's microbes in this media that could consume nitrogen, which is an essential plant nutrient. So basically these microbes are competing with the plant for the nitrogen. The irrigation practices in a greenhouse setting could be different when using these materials because of their physical properties. And there's also unknown effects on plant growth because of both the nitrogen and the irrigation practices. And so we conducted an experiment at the UNH greenhouses with two objectives. One was to evaluate the performance of petunia grown in media amended with wood fiber and wood chips. And the second was to evaluate the potential for the wood fiber and wood chips to immobilize the nitrogen. And we hypothesized that the media containing the wood materials will immobilize nitrogen from the fertilizer and then therefore reduce plant growth. So petunia were grown in 4 different types of potting media. They were hand blended at UNH. The first was 100% sphagnum peat, which was the control, and then 70% sphagnum peat mixed with 3 different materials. The first was 30% wood fiber made from European pine, 30% wood chips from loblolly pine in the United States, and 30% coconut coir. And we chose wood chips and coconut coir both because they have been shown to work in a media already, so we wanted to compare it to the results from the wood fiber. And so the petunia were grown for 6 weeks in a greenhouse which simulated commercial production, where they were fertilized with nitrogen at each irrigation. And so this is just some of our data collection information. After 6 weeks of growth, we measured both shoot growth and root growth, as shown in the pictures right there. And then also plant quality data was collected, so leaf greenness or leaf chlorophyll content was measured with a SPAD meter. We counted the number of flowers on each plant and also calculated the nutrient concentrations in the leaves. And media nutrient levels were measured in each pot every 2 weeks, and then comparative photos were also taken. And the immobilization of the fertilizer nitrogen was measured in a laboratory procedure where basically we took a sample of each different media type and dosed it with a known amount of nitrogen and then incubated it for 10 and 20 days, and then after measured the amount of nitrogen that was left. So if there were microbes in the material that were consuming nitrogen, you would find less at the end of the incubation period. And so these are just some of our results. These were the comparative photos that we took. The first is the control, the peat. The second is peat mixed with coir. The third is peat with wood chips, and the last is peat with wood fiber. So as you can see, the leaves were all dark green, indicating high chlorophyll content, and there were no differences between the media types. They all had high nutrient levels, all plants, so there was no indication of deficiency. And the plants were visibly smaller in the wood fiber media compared to 100% peat, as you can see in the picture. And nitrogen immobilization was not measured in the lab. And this is just a graph showing that the plant growth was the lowest in the media amended with wood fiber compared to 100% peat, coir, and wood chips. And this is the shoot and the root dry mass, so the whole plant. And then this is a graph showing the flower number results. So flowering was also the least in the wood fiber media, which petunia is a day neutral plant, so the more it grows, the more it flowers, so that could just be a relationship with the growth. And so after that 6 weeks of production, we continued to grow another set of plants for another 6 weeks where we didn't fertilize them at all. So it was a simulated home garden phase. And we found that the media type had no effect on garden performance. So all the leaves turned yellow, indicating deficiency in all the media types. And all the plants had low nutrient levels in the tissue, so less than 4% nitrogen. And the media type had no effect on flowering. And so our conclusions were that all plants were green and healthy after 6 weeks in the greenhouse, and growth and flowering was slightly reduced for plants grown in wood fiber media, but nitrogen immobilization was not detected in the laboratory. So the reduced growth in media containing wood fiber could have resulted from several different things, such as the physical properties, or research has shown that when adding wood materials to media, phytotoxic elements can be leached from the wood. So we don't really know how the plant responds to that yet. So the reduced growth could have been because of that as well. And media type had a little to no effect on plant performance during the home garden phase. And some take-home messages. Growers can produce quality petunia and media with 30% wood fiber with little effect on plant performance or on fertilizer practices. But there's a greater potential to affect plant growth and fertilizer with higher proportions of wood. So other preliminary data suggests that increasing fertilizer nitrogen may compensate for the reduced growth in the wood fiber substrates. These are just more pictures from the experiment this summer. And then I would like to thank our supporters, the New Hampshire Agricultural Experiment Station down at the McFarland Greenhouses, and UNH Cooperative Extension, and also our industry partners. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
picked two pine species. I'm not sure what European pine is, but why did you pick something that was a local tree, local pine?
Loblolly pine is actually from the United States.
Yeah, but not locally grown in
No, no. We worked with Dr. Brian Jackson. He is like the wood fiber or wood material substrates person. So he actually provided the wood chips for us, and the wood fiber was provided by the company. So we actually didn't like make those materials ourselves.
Thanks.
So, I guess the related question is, does anybody produce wood fiber from white pine or spruce? But it seems like the wood fiber right now has some issues. People want to try to use it, but it seems as though it may have issues.
Yes, and there's a lot of companies in Europe right now using wood fiber and producing it too, so I think that's where the European pine kind of stems from. But
It must be a conglomeration of pines grown in Europe, because I don't know of anything called European pine.
yeah, I'm not really sure.
What experiments are you doing now? How have you followed this up?
So this was an experiment from this past summer, and this fall we did an experiment where we increased the proportion of wood fiber or wood chips in the media, and we varied fertilizer concentrations across to see the reaction, and we got similar results, but we also found that if you increase the fertilizer nitrogen, it can kind of compensate for the amount of wood fiber that you blend with the peat.
Now you have to find out how to make sure none of the nitrogen comes leaching out in the irrigation water.
Right.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.